I'm going to show you how you can win 80% of your NFL totals. And if you stick to the end, I'm going to show you the exact website to be able to use to implement what I'm going to teach you in this video. This is the strategy that I use to win 80% of my totals in the NFL. Now, first off, what do you mean by totals? What's a total? All right, a total is an over or under in the game. All right, so for example, let's say Ravens versus Lions. The over under is 50. You're betting whether it's going to go over or under 50, which is total points. But how do you find which side to bet on? Which side is the right side? Well, that's what I'm going to explain to you guys here in just a couple steps, because it's actually pretty easy, and most people literally forget how to do this the correct way, and they just pretty much take a guess and they're like, oh, there's two high-scoring teams, I'm going to bet the over, or they're two great defenses, so I'm going to bet the under. That's not always the case. Now, the first thing that you're going to want to look at is going to be line movement. This is very important. All right, so line movement, meaning, let's say that this line right here is what it opened up at. Say the opening line was 50, okay? And let's say we're getting closer to the game on Sunday, and let's say that it's getting closer and closer, and now the line currently is 52, okay? So it went up. The mistake that a lot of sports bettors make here is they think the complete opposite of actually what you need to think, which they think is when it opened up at 50 and now it's at 52, you've lost all value, so now you go and you bet the other side, which would be the under here. That is not what you do. When you see line movement going up on a total, you should be looking at the over. Doesn't mean that you lost incredibly amount of value, because what we can do here to put it in our favor is we can literally be able to move our number right back to where we want it to be. But we're going to get into that a little bit later. But the first thing you want to look at is line movement, okay? Make sure that you have a number where it opened up at compared to what it closed at or what it's currently at, a differential there of at least 2 to 3 points. That's what I always like to say. So again, this would be what it looks like to look at the over. What would it look like for the under would be, let's say it opened at 50 and the current line is 48, okay? So open at 50, now is at 48. Now we would be looking at the under. Now that we got line movement out of the way, the next thing that we want to look at, so once you go through and you find those plays that have actual line movement, now you want to go through and see exactly what number that's falling on. The reason behind that is because there are key numbers in the NFL for totals and for spreads, but we're talking about totals right now. But this is why it's so important, all right? And I'm going to write down these numbers for you so you guys can actually see. So first couple numbers are going to be 40, 41, 43, 44, 47, 50, 51, and 55, okay? These are the key numbers for totals right there. So now what you need to see is, for example, if you're looking at an over, we're going to use an example as an over. So that matchup that we just went over, let's say the total moved to 52, okay? Say it went to 52 points. So now that it's at 52 points, if you look over here, we don't necessarily have this falling on a key number, right? But what it opened up at, which was 50, is an actual key number, which is right there. So what we're doing is we're going to be buying back to that original number that it opened up at. So you're only going to be buying like a couple points here to get it back to that original number, because we want to sway it in our favor. We want the probability in our favor, all right? So we want to sway it back. We want to buy a couple points here, but now since that landed on a key number, we have to buy off of that key number. What that means is now you have to go at least a half a point under there. So you would take that actually to 49.5, thus falling under that number of 50 being a key number. Now, this is very important. A lot of people miss this mistake, all right? Because the why is you literally can land on 50 and you end up pushing, or an extra possession you need to be able to get over 50, and that's huge in an NFL game. Where, as in, if you bought under the key number, you don't necessarily need that anymore, and now you might have been able to shave an extra possession off to be able to cover that number. So now once you have your key number situated, you have your line movement up. So now let's say we're looking at pretty much in this, we're looking at an over 49.5, right? That's what the bet is that we're looking at for the example that I'm using here. Now the same goes for the under here. So let's say for the under, let's use our example, okay? Let's say that we're at 52, and then next thing you know, we want to get that, well actually we're gonna use 48 for an example, okay? Let's say it was at 50 down to 48, we wanna get it back up to 50. So again, we're falling on that key number again, but we're on the under this time. And if you're on the under, you're landing on a key number. The next level here is still a key number too. So buying up to 51 would be a key number. So what would you have to do in this aspect is buy up over the second key number here. So then we would be looking at 51.5. So what you're doing is you're buying off and on key numbers. These are the most common totals in the NFL of what the games land on. So you have to buy off and on those numbers to give yourself a chance. There's been plenty of games where I've won on the totals literally by a half a point by just adjusting the number and buying off and on key numbers. That's why this is so important. Now, if you guys want to bypass all of this and you just want the answers given to you, all you got to do is click the link in the description, where I'll send you the exact plays that go through all this criteria every single day. Now, I suggest screenshotting these numbers right here because these are the key numbers for the totals in the NFL, and you're going to be able to use this every single week when you're being able to find your totals for the over-under and being able to buy off and on those key numbers. Now, let's go ahead and get to number 3. This is very important too. We're going to use it for both the over and the under. So if you're looking at an over in a game, let's say you have everything that lines up for your over. One more thing that you need to look for is yards per play on the offensive side and the defensive side. Now, why is this and what does this mean? This means the ability for a team to create big plays, because big plays will run the score up, and that's where you can get your over at. So the offense, you're looking for top 5, both teams, to be in the top 5 in offensive yards per play, and then you want them at least in the bottom 10 for defensive yards per play, meaning that they create a lot of big plays on offense, but they also give up a pretty decent amount of plays on defense that create a big chunk of yards, because that is what sets up an over. That's what sets you up in the correct position to be able to create an over. Now, let's look at the under. If you're paying attention, you probably obviously know it's the exact opposite of what this is, right? So your offense, your defense. Now what you're looking for here is the complete opposite. Bottom 10 in yards per play on offense, but then top 5 in yards per play on defense. So what this means is their offenses aren't that great and don't really create a lot of big plays, and even the defenses don't let up a lot of big plays. So that means a lot of short plays and a lot of time being run off the clock, thus for creating your probability for an under way better. Now, what websites do you find this type of information? So if you want the offensive and defensive yards per play, the easiest way to find that is going to Team Rankings. Okay, that's a website. You'll go to Team Rankings, you'll go to NFL Team Stats, and you'll be able to find all the stuff that you need. And where you want to look at under there is going to be total offense and total defense. That's exactly the steps that you'll take on that website to be able to find the information of yards per play for an offense and a defense. Now, those of you that are still here get to see the most important step out of everything, which is going to be the money and bet percentage. All right, this is very, very important. So what this looks like as you need to know exactly where the public is and where big money is being put. So on that example that we used, let's take a look at the over 49.5, like what we were looking at. All right, let's say, for example, we have 22% of the bets coming in on the over, but we have 78% of the money coming in on the over as well. What does this tell us? What does this dictate to us? This shows that not a lot of the public is looking at the over in this game, because what you'll see on the contrary to this would mean you would see 78% of the bets being placed on the under. So that means the public is all over the under here, which is smaller tickets, which is tickets that are on parlays, people putting in 10, 20 bucks, 30 bucks because they want to watch the game. As in the money, people that are placing thousands of dollars that are literally putting money up to win money, all right, serious money, is being put on the over in this game. So that is the mixture that you want to see. You want to see the complete opposite, all right? You want to see the public and small tickets on one side, where the sharp, big money on the opposite. And guess what? Once you find that mixture, now you've got yourself a way better probability to being able to get a total, whether it be the over or the under. Everything that I just showed you here for the over, for the under, it's just the complete opposite, all right? So let's say that we had 22% on the under, but 78% of the money was on the under, and 78% of the bets were on the over. It's the same exact thing, all right? You could use it for the over and for the under. But this is huge, because this literally dictates and shows you where exactly the big money is being placed in that matchup, rather than where the public is and all the parlays of everybody throwing their little parlays together, where those bets are being placed. Now, the public isn't wrong all the time, but majority of the time they are. Majority, you don't want to be on that side, okay? Majority of the time, you want to be where there's big money being placed, because that's going to give you the best probability of winning for your totals.